folks, Ariel over here. Today I wanted to do a video on growing sprouts indoors. I've done videos on this before, and I still grow them pretty much all winter, every year. And actually I'm growing more than I used to because now we also share them with the chickens and ducks. But this is something that's super easy. I only do it in the winter because we have so much fresh green stuff through the summer to eat. But if you don't have a big garden and stuff, this is something you could certainly do year round. So, usually these sprout jars are all lined up in the windowsill here, but as you can see, the sun came out and it's super blindingly bright for running the camera, so I have them here right now. I have 4 stages here, and I'm about to get a 5th one going. So, this jar is nearly full. You can see what that looks like. Lots of green wiggly sprouts in there. This one we will probably eat today. Usually we eat part of a jar and then I take the rest out and share it with the chickens and ducks because, like us, they don't have access to really any other green things right now. There's a couple feet of snow on the ground. So this jar is, I start one every day or every other depending what else I'm doing and how busy I am and if I remember and all of that. So this jar is about 5 or 6 days old. For comparison, this jar, I believe, is 2 days behind it. You can see how there's a lot of sprouts in there, but there's still, empty space. It hasn't fully filled the jar. You could eat these. I usually let them get a little bigger, but you could eat them at this stage. 2 days behind that, I believe, is this stage. You can see I haven't rinsed them yet. You can see all their little roots growing down, but they're just barely starting to grow. What would it be? The plant part up. It's still growing mostly root parts down. Then this jar has only been going for 1 day, and you can again see that it's mostly just starting to have little rootlets stick out of the seeds. Still looks mostly just like seeds. And then I'm going to start a new jar. Now you can grow sprouts in all kinds of things. I have a lot of mason jars because I can with them. Actually, earlier this fall, ran completely out of wide mouth masons because they were all full of something, but we continue to eat the food that we have preserved, and so I'm continually emptying them. There's something I tend to have around and have on hand, but you could use any kind of jar. If you don't happen to have canning jars, you do not have to go for one of these. You could use any kind of empty jar, or clear container would work just fine. But if you have mason jars, in the past I have used, it's shown in a video, these kind of sprouting lids. They screw right on a wide mouth mason. They're a plastic lid and they have little holes in them that lets you drain water out. But I do prefer not to use plastic for most things. At the time when I got these many years ago, as far as I know, there was, these were not being manufactured, or at least I wasn't aware of them. Now I have a bunch of these and I do like them better. It's basically just a regular jar ring and a little mesh insert where you can see there that it is kind of domed and it drains really well, and they're stainless steel and you can use them, I would think, practically forever. I've been using them for quite a few years now. This jar came from a thrift store, but to start a new jar, I put just a little bit of water in the bottom. It's like that deep. This is not specific at all. You're just trying to get the sprout seeds wet. And then I'm going to take, for a quart jar, and you can adjust this to your liking, I'm going to take just shy of 2 tablespoons of seeds. That will give me, as it grows, that completely full to the brim jar. So this looks like this. And that doesn't look like much seeds in there. You can kind of slosh it around in the water, get them soaking. And I'll let these sit here probably till this evening, just soaking in the water, and then pour it off. That gets the seed coating thoroughly saturated and thinking about waking up to grow. The seed mix is a good idea to start with actual sprouting seeds versus seeds sold for gardening and stuff, because with a lot of the ones that are my favorites to sprout for, if they're sold for planting in a garden, often they have coatings on them of different kinds of chemicals and inoculants and stuff, and that's not something you want to eat when you're eating the seed. This mix I made by buying a bag of clover, alfalfa, and broccoli seeds. That happens to be my 3 favorites, and then I mix them all. You can do any one of those singly. You can do other things. Radish is another really popular one. They're a little bit of a spicy flavor, which is just not my personal favorite. And you can do bigger ones like beans and stuff. I tend to not have... I've only done that a few times, and I've tended to have more issues with them getting moldy, which I just never have with the small ones, so I just don't grow the bigger ones. But people do successfully, I just haven't. But this mix of little seeds, and they're even pretty in this jar, but they, you know, I just do a variety of them, and that's our favorite flavor. But again, you could do any individual one, and that doesn't matter. I'll try to remember to leave a link down below to the ones I ordered and just poured together to make this jar. And this jar will last me pretty much all winter. I think last year, the 3 bags I dumped into here lasted me to where I had just a little left in the spring, and that was with growing sprouts for ourselves and the birds all winter long. Now what I do after they're just soaking, after this initial few hours, I don't ever leave water sit in here. What I do every morning, which it is right now, is rinse them. So how much water you need depends how big they are. This jar of just little, barely starting to sprout ones, I just put some water in there, kind of slosh it around, drain it back out through that sieve. They make cool little stands that let you set them at an angle. I've never got one of those or made my own. And then I kind of just shake the seeds so they're spread back out a little bit so they're not all in one clump. And then some people say put them in the dark until they start growing. You can, they don't have to be in the light. I personally find it most convenient to just keep all of my sprouts going on the windowsill, so these have been in the light from day one. And then I just go through my whole row of jars every morning. I only rinse them once a day. Some people say do it 2 or 3 times a day. You can. I just haven't really found it necessary, and we have pretty dry air, especially in the house in the winter here with the wood stove going. So I'm just putting a little fresh water in there, sloshing it all around, which is rinsing them off and recoating them with a little moisture to keep growing since they don't have any real dirt to grow in. And that's done. And you could set them upright. I feel like they stay spread out better if you lay them on their side, if you don't have a neat little sideways tippy rack. And so that's what I tend to do. It takes a little more water to get the whole mass wet as you move up in sprout age here. But you can see I'm just doing the same thing with each one of them. This jar I'm not going to rinse this morning because we're going to eat it. So I'll open that in a minute and show you what they'll actually look like. But that is pretty good. What you don't want them to do is stand in water. They will mold and get slimy. But rinsing them once a day, I do not have a problem with that. Occasionally some sprouts will stick into the top little bit of that mesh. But then when I open them, this jar is so full, and this is why I don't do more than that, not quite 2 tablespoons of seeds, because that's made this quart jar completely full. You can see what they look like. Just lots of little leafy green alfalfas, alfalfas, clovers, and broccolis. And you can eat this whole thing. What do you eat them on? You can just eat them like that. I find them juicy and delicious. We tend to eat a lot of them on morning breakfast soups. We do a lot of like broths with dropping eggs in and noodles and stuff, and just put fresh sprouts on top. Not even cooking them, just putting them on top of the bowl of soup as we go and sit down and eat it. I really like that. They're good in salads, of course. They're good in sandwiches. One of my favorite things growing up was doing, like fresh bread and put a little cream cheese on it and a thick layer of sprouts and make a cream cheese sprout sandwich. That's delicious, but you can put them in any kind of sandwiches, where you're doing meat and cheese and whatever, where you might put lettuce or something. They work great like that. Sprouts are highly nutritious. There's often like 200 to 600 times the amount of vitamins and stuff in this little teeny couple-day-old plant sprout as there is in a big mature leaf on the same plant. So this is part of our, I see it as not just part of our food, but part of our vitamin supplementation through the winter when we are eating less fresh things and we're eating more things out of the freezer and canned and fermented and so on. So this is one way I can grow fresh stuff easily in a very small space. I mean, these are all sitting on the windowsill, but they wouldn't, if you don't have a window this big, which isn't that large, they don't all have to be on a windowsill. You won't get much green color like these, ones that are ready to eat if they don't get sunlight. But none of the ones at this stage would have to be there. It's just most convenient for me to keep them all together. But anyway, you can really grow it in any kind of space. I grow a lot of sprouts in the tiny house, and like I said, I grow even more now because if we eat through part of the jar, then the rest go to the birds. The ducks particularly love when I throw chunks of sprouts into their water tub because ducks like splashing in the water. So when I throw some in their water tub, they all slurp in there with their bills and pull them all apart and slurp them down like they're little noodles. And where chickens don't love so much sticking their heads in water, I just throw some on the floor of their pen and around them, and they all pull little sprout bits out and gobble them down. And so it adds nutrients and fresh food for them through the winter as well. So then this isn't really related to sprouts, though it's also kind of sprouting seeds. This is my chicken feed. And every day I have 3 of these buckets, just reused yogurt containers. This is a little bit of a large size. This was a 64-ounce container of yogurt, but it's full to about an inch down from the top with our homemade, mix of wheat and millet and Milo and sunflower seeds and cracked corn and stuff. Got a whole video on doing that, making chicken feed. But because I let it sprout/ferment, now all this water I just rinse my sprouts with, because we do still carry all the water that we use in here. I pick up my handy sink basin here, and it seems like just about the amount that I use to rinse my sprouts fills this nicely. Don't take it quite to the top, but then I cover that, and over behind the door. I keep them outside in the summer, but they would freeze in the winter, so they just sit there behind the door, and then I'll put this one to the back of the line, and so the one... when I fed them this morning, when I went out and did the chores, had been sitting there for 48 hours fermenting. And a couple of the top seeds that are sticking out of the moisture will actually often start to grow sprouts that look much like these. But a lot of the bottom seeds ferment, and that seems to make the nutrients more digestible. I think it's nice, especially when it's cold outside, for them to have something that's warm and already moistened, so they're not having to drink as much cold water with dry food and so on. Anyway, they seem to like it. That bucket, that 64-ounce bucket, and it swells up in this little puff a little because it does get fermenting. Occasionally you hear a little poop when you're sitting around here, and it'll be because this lid actually blew pressure off. Of course, this isn't a very sealed lid, so it can't pressurize too much before it just pops the crack up there and lets the pressure escape from the fermentation. But that's what I do every morning for the chickens as well. And this bucket's feeding, we have 30 birds out there right now. We got 3 roosters and 27 hens. So it's a little bigger bucket than I used to be using when we had 15 or 17 birds or whatever. So it's a little more feed, but that's basically what they eat through the day as far as feed. And then they get supplements with sprouts, fish heads and guts. You guys have seen all that stuff. But anyway, that's my morning sprouting routine. Now I just got to open my windowsill and put everything back where it belongs and go make breakfast. Hopefully that gives you guys some ideas if you've ever wanted to grow a little of your own food. This is one of the quickest, easiest, because you've got a finished product ready to eat in 5 to 7 days. How fast they grow depends a little on which kind of seeds you choose to grow, and a little bit on the temperatures in your house. If your house is very cool, they'll grow a little slower. If it's warm, they'll grow a little faster. But in 5 to 7 days, you'll have food ready to eat, which is pretty exciting. And if you keep a rotation going like this, then you always have plenty of fresh stuff to eat. And you could do this, like I said, all summer as well. We just have outdoor growing space in the summer, and so we don't grow these because I've got too many other greens. But if you don't have an outdoor growing space, this is totally something you can do year round. So hopefully that gives you some inspiration. And if you watched videos here for years and years and know that I've done videos on this before, this is my current setup, and yes, I'm still doing it, and I pretty much grow sprouts every day, all winter, every winter. And I should have mentioned, if you've ever bought sprouts at the grocery store, this is also incredibly much cheaper than doing that, and they're better and fresher. So another good way to save money and feed yourself well.
Thank you everyone for watching. It means a lot, and I hope you learned something along the way.
If you know somebody else who would enjoy this as well, share it with them.